SIlO Episode 7 might have just killed a main character. Maybe. And that word maybe just became the most dangerous word in the entire SIlO. Because radio isn't just an episode title, it's a warning. This episode quietly proved that you cannot trust a single voice coming through that speaker, not the algorithms, not even a friend's. Tonight, I'm breaking down everything in SIlO Season 3, Episode 7. The mission that may have cost Lukas his life, the memory wipe in the water supply, and the past timeline bombshell that finally tells us the SILOs were built before the world ended. Full spoilers ahead. Let's get into it. Welcome to Let's Gossip. If you want the breakdown and the theories, not just a recap, subscribe, that's exactly what we do here. Let's start with the mission, because everything flows from it. Juliet and the Outsiders, Juliet, Bernard, Lukas have figured out something huge about the Safeguard Protocol, the system that can pump poison into SIlO 18 and wipe out everyone inside. To shut it down, they need a blueprint of the pipe layout, and they're betting that every SIlO is built the same way. So if they can get the plans from SIlO 17, they can find exactly where the Safeguard pipe sits in SIlO 18. That's the whole play. Save the kids trapped in 17 and steal the map that could disarm the kill switch. But here's the first red flag, and Juliet catches it immediately. She originally wants to send Knox and Shirley outside, and the algorithm refuses to let them leave. Then she names Lukas and Kennedy instead, and the algorithm approves them instantly. No hesitation. And that should terrify you, because in this show, when the machine that wants you dead suddenly makes something easy, it's not a gift. It's a trap. And Juliet knows it. The reason the algorithm greenlights Lukas and Kennedy is chillingly simple. It wanted both of them dead already for what they did back in Season 2. So sending them outside solves two problems for the algorithm at once. It removes two enemies, and it stops the trip to SIlO 17. Juliet is walking her own people into a machine that's 3 moves ahead of her. She tries to outsmart it. She tells Lukas and Kennedy to leave earlier than planned, to dodge whatever trap is waiting. It doesn't work. The two men head outside, out into that dead gray space between the SILOs, staying in contact with Juliet by radio. And there's a beautiful, heartbreaking beat here. Lukas, who has spent his whole life staring at the stars through a broken sensor, finally gets to look up and see the real night sky with his own eyes. And then, mid-conversation, the radio cuts out. A strange sound, what sounds like gunfire. And moments later, the algorithm coldly informs Juliet that both men are dead. Now, the pressure cooker. Believing Lukas and Kennedy are gone and the mission's blown, Juliet moves to her last resort. She has Teddy rig explosives to blow the Safeguard pipe directly. And just as Teddy is about to detonate, the radio crackles back to life. It's Kennedy. He says he survived the attack. He says the children in SIlO 17 are still alive, and he says he's carrying Lukas's helmet. Juliet makes a split-second choice. She trusts the voice, and she calls off the bombing at the very last second. And that is where the episode plants its knife. Because notice what it does not tell us. It never confirms what happened to Lukas. Kennedy is carrying his helmet, but where's Lukas? Is he wounded? Captured? Dead, with Kennedy carrying the helmet as the only thing left of him? The episode refuses to say. Which brings us to the biggest theory of the night. Is Lukas actually dead? I see 2 readings, and both are disturbing. Reading 1, Lukas is genuinely gone. He died in that ambush, and Kennedy is carrying his helmet the way you carry a fallen friend's dog, tags proof, and grief in one object. Reading 2, and this is the one that should keep you up, the algorithm can fake the radio. Think about it. First, the algorithm tells Juliet they're dead. Then, a voice claiming to be Kennedy tells her they're alive. Both messages came through the same radio, and this episode is literally called Radio. What if the machine that manufactured their dead report can just as easily manufacture Kennedy's voice to stop Juliet from blowing that pipe? Because a destroyed pipe is a problem the algorithm can't fix? If that's true, Juliet just made a life-or-death decision based on a lie the machine wanted her to believe. And going forward, she can never fully trust anything that comes through a speaker again. The show didn't just leave Lukas's fate open, it weaponized doubt itself. And notice what else Camille does this episode, because it rhymes perfectly with that theme. She dumps a memory-wipe drug, the vitamin D, into the SIlO's water supply to erase what people have learned and kill their curiosity about the truth. So in a single episode, you've got the SIlO controlling its people two ways, faking the information that comes in through the radio and erasing the information already in their heads through the water. That's the real subject of radio. Control through what you're allowed to hear and what you're allowed to remember. Now, let's jump to the past, the before times, because this timeline just delivered the biggest reveal of the season. Helen and Daniel, still chasing the conspiracy, get flown out over a massive stretch of farmland in Georgia, hundreds of thousands of acres owned by a tech billionaire named Per Stensen, played by Colin Hanks. And there, spread across the land, they see it. Enormous drilling machines, carving the earth, building the SIlOs, all 51 of them. Before the apocalypse, before the world ends, sit with what that confirms. The SIlOs were not desperate shelters thrown together after a disaster. They were planned, engineered, and under construction in advance, which means the people building them either knew the end was coming or were arranging it. This is the exact dark truth the books this show is based on point toward, that the end of the world wasn't an accident the SIlOs saved people from. It was a scheduled event the SIlOs were built to survive, and that reframes everyone in charge, not as protectors, but as architects. Then there's Per Stensen himself, and the strange little parable he tells. Stensen presents himself as a man who only wants to protect humanity, and he tells Helen and Daniel a story about scientists who have the genetic material to create a unicorn, and a billionaire who wants to fund it just so he can kill the unicorn once it exists, while Stensen insists the creature should live. Now why put a unicorn parable in a show about doomsday bunkers? Because it's a coded confession. The unicorn is the SIlOs, the rare, impossible thing humanity is about to create. And the two men arguing over it are the two philosophies behind the whole project. One faction that wants to build this new controlled world in order to preserve life, and another that sees it as something to dominate and ultimately sacrifice. Stensen wants us to believe he's on the side of protection, but in a show where everyone in charge is lying, the man telling you a gentle story about saving a miracle is exactly the man you should watch the closest. Quick hits before we go. Knox learns his father died 2 years ago and that the story he was told about that death doesn't add up. Another thread of the SIlO's lies about who really dies and how. Hank and Paul notice something off about Glenda's movements, a small seed that'll matter later. And all of it circles the same theme. In SIlO 18, the truth is the most tightly controlled resource there is. So heading into episode 8, here's what I'm watching. 1. The helmet. If Kennedy really has it, we need to see Lukas alive, or we have our answer. 2. Whether Juliet realizes the radio can be faked, because the moment she stops trusting it, this war changes. And 3. Per Stensen, because the man building 51 SIlOs and telling parables about unicorns is about to become the most important face in the whole origin story. This has been Let's Gossip. So tell me in the comments, is Lukas alive or is the algorithm faking Kennedy's voice to save its own pipe? I genuinely can't call it, and I want to hear your read. Subscribe, and I'll see you next week for episode 8.